Welcome, everyone. Today's story tells about the mother of all bombs. I hope you all enjoy, and please remember to like and subscribe, or we will revert back to the dark ages. The dust swirled, a malevolent ochre cloud that choked the air and clung to everything. The scrubby bushes, the jagged rocks, the skin of the Afghan soldiers huddled behind the armored Humvee. Sergeant Khalil coughed, pulling his tattered scarf higher over his face. He could taste the grit, a bitter reminder of the war that had defined his life. He was a veteran of countless skirmishes in the unforgiving mountains of Nangarhar province, a land that had known nothing but conflict for decades. Khalil glanced at Captain Zaman, his face etched with a weariness that mirrored his own. Zaman was a good man, a fair leader, and fiercely loyal to his men. But even Zaman looked shaken. They were deep in the Akin district, a stronghold of Daesh, the self-proclaimed Islamic State. Here, the black flag of terror flew high, and the whispers of brutality echoed through the valleys. For weeks, they had been engaged in a relentless, grinding campaign to dislodge the ISIS fighters from their entrenched positions. The enemy was dug into a labyrinth of caves and tunnels, a subterranean fortress that defied conventional attacks. U.S. airstrikes had proven largely ineffective, the bombs swallowed by the earth before they could inflict significant damage. Casualties were mounting, both for the Afghan National Army and the American Special Forces advisors working alongside them. Word had reached them, filtered through the rumor mill and the nervous chatter of the radios, about a new weapon, a weapon unlike anything they had ever seen or imagined. A weapon so powerful it could shake the earth itself. They called it the mother of all bombs, the MOAB. Khalil dismissed it as bravado, another attempt by the Americans to intimidate the enemy. He had seen their advanced weaponry before, their drones and their laser-sighted rifles. But weapons alone couldn't win this war. It was fought in the hearts and minds of the people, in the dusty villages where fear and desperation bred loyalty to whoever offered protection, however brutal. Then the order came. They were to pull back, to establish a perimeter several kilometers from the designated target. The Americans were preparing something big. Khalil's doubt gave way to a prickling sense of unease. He had witnessed the devastating power of American bombs before, but the way the officers spoke, the hushed tones and the nervous glances, told him this was different. Hours crawled by. The sun beat down with merciless intensity. The soldiers waited, their nerves stretched taut, their eyes fixed on the distant ridgeline where the enemy was holed up. The radio crackled with cryptic messages, confirming the preparations. Then the sky roared. A colossal C-130 transport plane, the size of a small building, lumbered into view. It flew low, almost impossibly low, its engines straining against the weight it carried. Khalil had seen C-130s before, bringing supplies and reinforcements, but this one moved with a deliberate, almost ominous purpose. The plane reached the designated drop zone, and for a moment hovered almost motionless in the air. Then the cargo door opened. What emerged was unlike anything Khalil could have ever conceived. It was a bomb, but not like the sleek, steel-jacketed missiles he was accustomed to seeing. This was a behemoth, a crude, ungainly cylinder, painted a dull gray. It looked enormous, impossibly large, like a metal whale breaching the sky. For a split second, it hung suspended in midair, a silent, terrifying spectacle. Then it began to fall. Khalil instinctively ducked, burying his face in the dirt. He clenched his eyes shut, bracing for the inevitable. He felt the air compress, a palpable wave of pressure pushing against his body. Then came the light, an unearthly, blinding flash that burned through his eyelids, painting the world in an incandescent white. Then the sound, a deafening, earth-shattering roar that ripped through the mountains, a sound that seemed to tear the fabric of reality itself. It was a sound that resonated deep within his bones, a sound that would haunt his nightmares for years to come. The ground bucked and heaved beneath him. He lost his footing, thrown to the ground like a rag doll. The Humvee rocked violently, on its suspension, its metal frame groaning in protest. For what seemed like an eternity, the world was a maelstrom of chaos. Then, slowly, agonizingly, the tremors subsided. The roar faded into a low, rumbling echo. The blinding light dimmed, leaving behind a hazy afterglow. Khalil cautiously raised his head, his ears ringing, his vision blurred. He spat out the dirt and slowly sat up, his body aching, his mind reeling. The world had changed. Where once there had been a rugged mountain landscape, now there was a gaping hole in the earth. A crater of unimaginable size, a raw, scorched wound on the face of the planet. The trees were gone, vaporized. The rocks were pulverized, reduced to dust. The air was thick with the acrid smell of burning sulfur and the faint, metallic tang of blood. He could see the horrified faces of his fellow soldiers, their eyes wide with disbelief. No one spoke. They were all too stunned, too overwhelmed by what they had just witnessed. Captain Zaman slowly rose to his feet, his face ashen. He stared at the crater, his expression a mixture of awe and horror. "God have mercy on their souls," he whispered, his voice barely audible above the ringing in their ears. The aftermath was surreal. The Afghan and American forces cautiously advanced towards the devastated area, their rifles raised, expecting resistance. But there was none. The ISIS fighters were gone, obliterated by the sheer force of the explosion. Their tunnels, their bunkers, their entire subterranean fortress had been reduced to rubble. The days that followed were spent sifting through the debris, collecting the bodies, and assessing the damage. The scale of the destruction was staggering. It was estimated that hundreds of ISIS fighters had been killed, their bodies vaporized or buried beneath tons of rock and earth. The bombing marked a turning point in the fight against ISIS in Afghanistan. It dealt a devastating blow to their morale and their ability to operate in the region. The surviving fighters scattered, abandoning their strongholds and fleeing into the mountains. But the victory came at a cost. Khalil found himself haunted by the memory of the explosion, by the sheer, overwhelming power of the MOAB. He understood the strategic necessity of the bombing, the need to eliminate the ISIS threat, but he couldn't shake the feeling that something had been lost, something fundamental to the human spirit. He had seen death and destruction before, but never on this scale. The MOAB was more than just a weapon. It was a symbol of the destructive potential of humanity, a stark reminder of the power of technology to obliterate life and landscape. He also thought of the villages nearby, the innocent civilians who had been caught in the crossfire, their lives disrupted, their homes damaged. He knew that the war against ISIS was a just cause, but he wondered if the price they were paying was too high. He returned to his village a changed man. The cheers of victory sounded hollow in his ears. The faces of his family, so relieved to see him alive, seemed blurred by a film of dust and despair. He tried to explain what he had seen, but words failed him. How could he describe the indescribable? How could he convey the horror and the awe that had consumed him? He found solace only in the quiet moments, sitting beneath the shade of the ancient mulberry tree in his courtyard, listening to the murmur of the wind and the distant bleating of the goats. He tried to find peace in the simple rhythms of life, in the enduring beauty of the Afghan landscape. But the memory of the MOAB lingered, a dark shadow in his mind. He knew that the war was not over. He knew that the fight against extremism would continue for years to come. And he knew that the world had changed forever, not just for him, but for all of Afghanistan. Years passed. The echoes of the MOAB faded, replaced by the drumbeat of new conflicts and new challenges. The story of the mother of all bombs became a legend, a whispered tale of unimaginable power and devastating consequences. But for Sergeant Khalil, the memory remained vivid, a constant reminder of the day the earth shook and the sky burned. He had seen the face of modern warfare, and he knew that there was no glory in it, only destruction and despair. He hoped, with all his heart, that he would never have to witness such a thing again. He prayed for peace, for his country, and for the souls of those who had been lost in the deafening roar of the MOAB. Thank you for listening, and please remember to like and subscribe. The Dark Ages sound cool until you're stuck